Well, Prasa announced strides in the rebuilding of rail infrastructure, marking a milestone in the revival of rail. Well, despite facing challenges, Prasa reports that 31 out of 40 rail lines are now operational, signaling progress in efforts to improve commuter services. The rail agency says one of the notable success stories is the Southern Line. Transport Minister Sindiwe Chikunga will be inspecting and taking a ride from Fish Hoek on the Southern Line. And Newzroom Africa's reporter Nasiphi joins us live for more. Nasiphi, a good morning to you. How is it looking?
Well, it seems that it's all systems go, as you put it, Prasa and the Transport Ministry announcing that trains are back on track and making significant strides while ensuring that commuters are receiving that much needed service, as we do know that train transport, particularly here in the Western Cape, used to be the backbone of the public transport system, with many relying on trains to commute, taking into account that it was one of the cheapest, or still is the cheapest mode of transport. And I'm joined now by the Minister, who is not only going to be inspecting and opening or cutting a ribbon later on, but also taking us through some of the strides that you are noting as the Transport Ministry.
Good morning to yourself and to your viewers. We are on board the train from Fish Hoek station to Cape Town. I had 10 rand in my purse and I got a 1 rand change. And that talks to the affordability of the passenger rail services, which is one of the principles that we would want to achieve as the Department of Transport. But more than anything, I'm now in a train that observes issues of safety. And when you talk about safety, we're looking at how the doors of the train open and how they close. And it's the driver of the train that can actually open or close the train. So once the train starts to move, the doors get closed just like that. But also it's a train that observes issues of security. In each of the trains, inside the train, there's a security officer. But even at the station itself, there are security officers that Prasa has deployed to ensure the security of our people. But of course, the issue of efficient services. If you are inside this train, for instance, today it is cold outside. Inside here it is warm because of the aircon that we have in the train. That makes our people feel comfortable when they are in the train, seated in the manner that brings some dignity in them. So this is one thing that we are happy about, and that this train now is running on a corridor that has been recovered, but also where we have installed signaling, which if you want, you can say it's a robot on the road. And therefore we're no longer operating these operations manually. We actually are using signaling and the technology that we have installed, making it possible for us that during peak hours we run at least 9 trains. And from 3 for that matter, when we're running them manually, they now have increased to 9 trains. This is what we are doing for ourselves as South Africans, with the trains that we manufacture here in South Africa, with the material and the equipment that is purchased and made in South Africa by the people and engineers and artisans from South Africa.
Minister, you were indicating, or rather Prasa indicating, that 31 of the 40 corridors in the country reopened. And I think one of the sore points for Prasa and the Transport Ministry in the Western Cape is the Central Corridor, where a number of communities have encroached, or informal settlements have encroached Prasa infrastructure. Any update so far as the relocation to those communities?
We're already doing some work there, to the extent that by mid-May next year, we'll have extended the operations to Nokulungisa station, if I'm calling it correct, station. And therefore the people of Khayelitsha, of Philippo and others will now be able to see stations. Indeed, we've not installed signaling, and therefore we'll still be running those trains partially, and when we're managing them and operating them using the manual way of doing things, that's when we say it's partial, and therefore not running trains on the basis of frequency, but on the basis of what we can do under the circumstances. But we'll be running those trains, and it is the same trains same trains that we're talking about, Istimela Sabantu, the blue trains that we're making and manufacturing in South Africa. So yes, the services and the operations will commence mid-May next month, and we'll be here to say to the people of Khayelitsha, here is your train, and here is the corridor that it will now be operating upon. So there is a lot of work that is happening in that regard, and we are happy with the progress that we're making. There have been indeed delays because of what you have said, people building their shacks on the railway line, and it's something that we beg our people not to do, not to build structures on rail reserves, even for that matter on road reserves, because we have plans. Today the road or the railway line might be this, but at any time given, depending of course on the needs, we might have to expand and to increase the railway lines. And if people build their houses on the rail reserves, that actually means that we cannot provide those services or grow the services as it might be needed in future. And these are the challenges that we are meeting, not only on the railway lines, but even on our roads, where you actually see formal structures built on road reserves. That will be the issue about Oshukpo, border post, for instance, where you even see churches built on the road reserves. So this is one thing that we're talking to our people to say, please avoid, including our traditional leadership, that we shouldn't, but our people that come from wherever provinces to come to cities or metros, that they should respect our reserves. They mean good for them, but also they mean good for South Africa.
And then, Minister, in 2019, obviously the Central Line was halted and it's partially being reopened. As you're saying that come next year, the people of Khayelitsha will be able to enjoy that will be able to enjoy that service. What lessons are you taking away with the vandalism that we saw on that Central Line in terms of protecting the infrastructure of the Central Line? We understand that there's going to be a wall that is going to be built. How far are we in terms of putting those measures in place?
I think when it comes to the issue of vandalism, it's got an element, and that is why we have increased the security of our infrastructure. And it's not without money, it's very costly. But we are walling our railway lines, so you can actually see that we are building walls along our infrastructure. We have employed a number of security personnel in terms of officers themselves, and others that are employed on a full-time basis, but others they are outsourced. Our aim is to insource the services. So there's a lot that we're doing. We are installing cameras, for instance. We're installing cameras, for instance, on our railway lines. But even the train itself, it's got those security features. And that talks to the issues that we are raising.